The work the SAG Foundation is doing is enormously important. From the up-and-coming actors to the veterans like myself, the foundation is here to help all of us.
As fellow artists, we've all been there. It's crucial that we remember where we came from and help out however we can.
For over 25 years, the SAG Foundation has been the industry's best-kept secret, and we're out to change that.
As natural storytellers, it's great that we have the opportunity to give back through the children's literacy programs.
A disaster like Sandy really brings it home with how crucial the SAG Foundation is. Their donation drive helped so many people in need.
The seminars and workshops are crucial. Working together is what makes us better.
The SAG Foundation is a nonprofit organization that relies solely on donations to keep these important programs free for everyone.
The SAG Foundation can't do it alone. We need you.
If you need help, ask.
If you can help, give.
We're all in this together.
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 Together, everyone benefits.
Join the cause.
Act now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm Jo Beth Williams. I'm the president of the SAG Foundation. And I just want to let you know that tonight is a very special event. This is the first Life Raft event sponsored by the Becky Pastor Fund. Becky Pastor was a nurse, but she was also an actress and a voiceover artist, and she loved all of the arts, but particularly theater arts and voiceover arts. And her generous, generous family has given us a donation to start a fund in her name. I want to particularly thank her sister, Joan Pastor, who is here with us tonight. So please give her a big welcome. Thank you, Joan. And enjoy tonight's event. It's a great panel. It's going to be a great event. Thank you.
All right, so welcome. So the title of tonight's panel is Tales from the New Media Front. Content creators share their secrets. So we'll be sharing very dark, deep secrets tonight. And if by the hour mark we don't feel like we have shared dark secrets, we will have the audience ask maybe a little bit more deeply. I'm Zadi Diaz. I worked for Disney Interactive for 2 years as head of content development, which pretty much is developing and producing content for Disney online originals. Before that, I worked as a online video content producer. I founded Smashface, co-founded Smashface Productions, and I co-created a show called Epic Food, which was about web culture. And that ran for about 5 years. So here we are today, and we're talking about my passion, which is online video, with some of the people that really are leading that in today's kind of online world. So we're gonna go down the row, and you guys introduce yourselves and just give it a little bit of background.
Hey guys, I'm Yuri Barnofsky. I run a company called Happy Little Guillotine Studios. Yeah, that's a good reaction. I'm a writer, producer, and director, and an actor. And we do a lot of branded series as well as branded commercials, but series is kind of what we try to focus on. And yeah, that's about it. I'm very good looking. Go ahead, Mark. Top that.
I think that gets a bigger laugh than the happy good looking. Just the way you deliver it. My name is Mark Gant. I'm an actor, writer, director, producer. I co-created a web series / feature film called The Bannen Way for Sony's Crackle.com. I'm currently developing several projects for the web and TV and film. And over the last couple years post-Bannen, had the opportunity to work with a lot of people in the space as an actor, including the handsome Yuri.
Unfortunately.
Yes,
yeah.
And also directed several episodes of a branded series called Sweet Seven with Wilson Cleveland, and an episode that Yuri actually wrote.
Hi, I'm Helenna Santos-Levy. I am primarily an actor, a producer, and I found a new blog for women in entertainment called Ms. in the Biz. I have 80 women writing for me, and we just launched last month. It's going really awesome. I basically have been an independent web creator for quite some time. Actually, my first sort of foray into the space was seeing Mark and Zadi on a panel at Digital Hollywood a while ago, so it's really cool for me to be here with these guys. I am a partner and a producer for Marty Farrell Films. We're in development for our feature film, Women in the Woods. And I'm also a producer and a series regular on the new web series Henchmen that we're just wrapping up production for right now.
I'm Ian Moffat. I am head of premium content at Machinima. I always have to kind of pronounce that because it's a word that nobody knows what it means. But Machinima, I'll just take a minute to explain. We're the biggest entertainment player on YouTube. So it all started out with people at home mostly young guys, doing gameplay and actually doing gameplay capture of Call of Duty or Halo, whatever it might be. Putting those videos on YouTube with tips and tricks as here's this weapon or that weapon. And machinima as an art form is a mix of machine and cinema. It's probably a bit grand to call it an art form, but it's basically using gameplay footage to actually make a show. So you would actually write a scene, make the characters in your game, be it Halo or whatever, do the actions, voice it afterwards, and all of a sudden you've got a sitcom set in Halo. So we have two big pieces of the business. There's the network, which is 8,000 channels of content creators who we help build their audience and build their community and help them with their monetization. And then we have 7 owned and operated channels that are different theme channels, like we have the Machinima Main, which is like our NBC, I guess. There's Realm, which is all about community, and games like Minecraft and League of Legends. Respawn, which is first-person shooters like Halo, Call of Duty, etc. And my main focus is on the premium content. So a couple of years ago, we did a live-action Mortal Kombat series, which spawned a few other series like Receiver, which was a sci-fi show, Bite Me, which was a zombie comedy. In the last 12 months or so, it's really ramped up. We did a live-action Halo series, which has over 60 million views now. We just about to launch live-action Mortal Kombat Series 2 with Warner Brothers, and I have a Street Fighter live-action series. You see a pattern developing here. Street Fighter live-action series going into production in Bulgaria in about a month's time. And actually, Tekken isn't next for various reasons, but I'll explain that as we talk.
So maybe it'd be good to hear some origin stories here. Yuri, you've been working online for quite some time. I think when we met,
2006,
and even before then, you've been working online. Can you tell us a little bit about how you began and what kind of that landscape looked like at that point?
Sure, yeah. I started, 2005. We made a feature film like every filmmaker wants to make that no one ever saw. But at the time, online, no one was really doing anything other than, like cats and a few sketches, but mostly like cats. And there was a contest on MySpace for effects. They were going to do like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia contest, so it was like, make your own sitcom in 5 minutes. It was before the whole idea of web series was really made. So we took our cast from our feature, which wasn't done yet, and still isn't, and and we had this idea for a show that we had thought of, and we shot it the 5 minutes over a weekend, and we didn't win the contest, but we got this weird, fan base thing off of MySpace. There's like a community built around it, and it was weird. It was like, wait, people are watching. The people wrote letters to FX because we didn't win, and we're like, what? So we said, okay, well, the show's called Break a Leg, by the way, and so we were like, well, let's try to make a full episode. And again, there were no standards of what people would make. So we made a 30-minute show, like a 30-minute first episode, and because of the limits on YouTube at the time that you can put a video over 10 minutes, I think, we split it up into 4 pieces. And there was no one else really to compete. There was like a show called The Berg, but I think it was a few months after us. And so it kind of hit a vein, and we got a lot of great press from it, and then we did that for 4 years, and no one paid us. It was a really fun experience. It was also terrible.
In what way?
Well, we worked nonstop, and we all had full-time jobs, and it was like, let's shoot at midnight till 4 in the morning, and then go to work. And just, it was, and all the actors were amazing. I mean, no, we didn't pay anyone. And they just showed up, and they were very dedicated, and everyone almost knew their lines. And and it grew, you know, to a point of when we were finished with it. Well, this is it was a two-part thing. We finished it, and we were like, great. We got all this great press, like Wall Street Journal wrote about it, just amazing stuff. And then it was done, and I was like, cool, now we're gonna get something else. And it was like, nope, like there was nothing, no emails, no one said anything. And so for a few months, we were just kind of like, what happened? We reached this height, and then we just kind of, so then after a few months of depression, we started trying to make some more things, pitching ideas, et cetera. And I feel like it's a lesson I keep learning is like when I stop doing stuff, everything around me stops. Like I stop getting any potential jobs. I stop getting anything. When I start doing things, all of a sudden from different areas, things pop in. People call. It's this weird, fateful thing. So I started writing a blog, which seemed to help, and we started working with Blip TV a little bit, which is a video distribution site like YouTube, but they catered more to like what we like to make, which is longer scripted series. So we started working with them on doing branded commercials, and we shot a thing for Reebok for them, and we shot a thing for Chili's, and then we pitched a thing to 7-Eleven, a reality road trip show, and amazingly got it by shooting a trailer for what that show would look like potentially. And the ad agency told us later that they were drunk at a bar, and they were looking at all the pitches that were paperwork, and were like, oh, we'll watch this DVD. And they watched it, and like, oh, we love it, we'll hire them. They didn't look at anything that we did before, thankfully. They were just like, oh, sure, they could do it. And that really started our company, and since then, it's kind of what we've been doing. The latest show we did was called Leap Year, and we've done 2 seasons of it on Hulu. It was sponsored by a brand called Hiscox Insurance. And it's basically, I mean, they told us to make a scripted series that had no branding in it. It was just around the show, and just make a good show that hit their audience. And we did, and it's done really well for us. And now we're trying to do more things like that. So,
Helenna, I saw you nodding your head when Yuri
his
was
blog?
talking about his
Yeah,
blog.
it's so good. If you guys, you need to
Thanks.
check out his blog.
I haven't
It's really
updated
great.
it in a year, but
No, the content is
previous
amazing, though.
stuff is
Yeah.
great.
It's one of the places when I was learning about the web space that I went to go
Oh, thank
learn
you.
about the web
Thanks.
space. So.
Thanks. It's in Yiddish, so it's.
I'm really good with Yiddish.
What is it called?
YuriBaranowski.com, the blog.
No, but what is in there?
What?
Don't you have like a...
Oh, yes, it's called The Wild Musings of a Web Celebrity.
Love
that. Thanks.
So, Mark, you know, or your breakout hit was the Bannen Way. But before that, can you talk a little bit about how you kind of crafted yourself online and kind of what it took to kind of get to the point where you do have people talking about the thing that you are creating?
Yeah, well, when we first started when we first came up with the idea for Bannen was April 2007, and you know, around the same time you were kind of doing your first season, I guess, that there wasn't a whole bunch out there in terms of web series. I mean, the term web series really wasn't you know, out there, and we were originally going to do a feature, and we were originally going to do the indie route, and we just decided, well, maybe we'll do a short to raise some money for the feature. And when we started budgeting what the short was going to be, it was around $50,000 to shoot in a bank and do this whole thing. We just said, well, you know, this doesn't make sense. We're just like, I was just at Sundance with a short film that nobody saw. There's like 5 people in the audience. I came back to LA. Nothing changed in my life. And I thought, you know, why don't we do something where millions of people could possibly see our show? And so I suggested to Jesse, you know, maybe we should do this like a web series or like a mobisode. And mobisodes were actually more popular than web series then. And he's like, what's a web series? And I was like, well, it's kind of like it's a TV series on the web. And so I showed him a whole bunch of shows that were on there, like Pink, which was like an action show. And IFC had a show that they had just picked up called and I can't remember. It was about a hitman who lived with his mother, and it was great. It was like high production value, And so I kind of conned him into doing the web series because I told him that millions of people could see us, his directing and my acting over the short film at Sundance. And then we basically developed it for about a year and a half. And through that time, web series started to pick up and more people were starting to see them. And Sony had launched Crackle kind of full force. And at the time, they were doing short format, kind of 2 to 3 minute to 5 minute comedies, but it was like a perfect timing as we had this kind of action comedy that was not like anything that was on the web at the time, and nobody at that point had ever done a web series / feature film. Everybody was doing these short, kind of 2-3 minute thing, and basically everybody kept telling us along the way. All the people that were in the space were telling us it's not going to happen. It's too expensive. Nobody's doing that kind of show, and you guys are nobody. So you should probably.
This is a constant thing that happens online, by the way, because it's
yeah.
like everyone. Anytime you try to do something new in any career, I imagine, is that everyone's like, don't do this. It's crazy, and they're always wrong.
Yeah, most of the time. Usually. And so so we everybody kept saying no, and then we basically said we should just shoot something. So we shot these 2 5-minute episodes, and kind of in a weird way, Taryn, who was supposed to be here, she found the Bannen Way, those 2 episodes, through this entertainment attorney who followed me on Facebook, who I didn't know, who knew me through somebody else, and he had posted about us posting the trailer for that, and then he had sent it to her. She liked it. She sent it to Tim Street, who then, posted about it and did an article, which then got TubeFilter. And before we even had a deal or even, a meeting with Sony, like people were already talking about the show. And it was, we were like, whoa, people are like watching this and they're like commenting and sending us emails and want to do interviews. And we didn't even know, what to do with it. And then we, pitched it around town and ended up selling it to Sony. And, we're able to make, a show that we wanted to make with the amount of money that nobody was ever given to do that kind of a show with like no names, because we weren't anybody. And it was an amazing journey with a million no's all the way through that process as well. And now we are, in talks to develop it as the second season, but as 6 22-minute episodes in a totally different format than the original web series feature. So.
And Helenna, so you've started this blog called Ms. in the Biz, and as we're talking about taking ownership of your career, you have this kind of platform where you're kind of connecting the dots, especially within women in entertainment. Can you talk a bit about kind of the conversations that you've had and the stories that you've heard and even your own personal experience around, how do you ramp up a career to the point where you do have that audience, where you do kind of have the ability to tell that story?
Well, I think what was really amazing in the time that we're in right now is how important social media is. Bringing all these women together, people always ask me, like, how did you find all these women? Where are they from? Like, this woman in Australia and women in Canada. And it's because I've made the connections over the years through social media. And everybody's different. There's writers, there's directors, there's producers, there's makeup artists and stylists, and everyone's talking about their personal stories. In doing that, I think what's really cool is that we're also branding ourselves so that with the way that social media is able to do that, we can really tell the stories that are important to us. So, and what was your question? Just so I'm like actually answering.
Kind of how do you start? How you started kind of that community, and what does it actually mean? Personally, I mean, has it helped or affected you starting a blog from scratch?
Yeah.
Making connections with other women, with other actors and producers and writers, just kind of as people are looking to get their own career started, what that process was like, how difficult it was or not?
Really hard. I mean, lots of long hours. My husband can attest. I'm sitting at my computer for 14, 16 hours trying to figure out WordPress that I didn't know and teaching myself. But I think that's what a lot of content creators or anybody online, that's sort of just how you do it. Like, I've spent a lot of years just watching and observing and being a fly on the wall and not being afraid of the things that I didn't know. And that's like going to something like Digital Hollywood or a tube filter panel, if you all know what tube filter is, and not knowing anybody and going in those rooms and being like, I have no idea what this space is about, but I'm gonna learn and I'm gonna figure it out. And I think it's just a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get it going. And then you just end up connecting and it just starts to happen. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
Does that answer?
That does. So Ian, so you're on the other side of the fence. When we talk about storytelling online, you mentioned, a lot of the series and videos that initially came from Machinima as kind of gameplay, right? Where you have the narration and the gameplay and you don't really see who's playing, but you kind of get taken through that experience. What do you see from your side as people come in and you interview them or you have meetings with them, and what is it that what qualities do you look for? What are the things that pop up in these meetings that kind of raise red flags maybe on your end, or lets you know who to work with? Who
They have to be handsome for starters.
I think you have Yuri here.
In this town, nothing
Well,
else
I'm doing
works.
3 shows for Machinima.
That's right. Well, in terms of, we've done a number of shows this year that have been with, been on the more economical end of the budget scale, shall we say, with guys. But really, the biggest kind of leg up you can get is if you've done it before, and that sounds ridiculous, but there's a show we did a second season of called Good Cops. And even though it's all, the content is kind of based in gameplay on a lot of what Machinima does. What we're trying to do is, really, it's evolution, not revolution. But it's, we're not going to do a game show tomorrow. But everything we do is inspired by the kind of gamer lifestyles and passions. Whether that's kind of irreverent comedy, because they all like their Family Guy and all that kind of stuff. But it's a lot of action, adrenaline. These guys have learned their understanding of narrative, if you can learn an understanding. They've learned their narrative from gameplay. So a lot of it is moving forward, momentum, kind of fighting, killing, all that kind of stuff. But it's a lot about adrenaline. So for example, with Good Cops, when they came in, it was just a heightened reality. It's kind of a big, daft cop show. But the big thing was, if they'd have come in and pitched it, and hadn't actually seen, they already did a season themselves, and on their own dime, like saying, shooting till 4 a.m, and it was just good, So, and it was also very cheap. So I just thought, well, let's do it. Let's do a season of that, and it worked very well. But it's about people that have a vision and an energy and just a way to get things done. That's different at the other end when you're doing the Halo live action thing with Microsoft, which is a whole other, a whole other ball game. But in terms of individual creators and talent, you just get a feel for people, and life. Although there are a lot of difficult people in this town, life is often too short. I think half the battle is you find people that you just, you connect with, you get on with, and you think, actually, I'm going to have to spend a lot of time with these people if we do this, so I don't want many dicks in that room, as it were. A metaphorical dicks, sorry. And anyway, so yeah.
So you're saying personality is as important as
It absolutely is, absolutely, without a doubt. There's one of my mentors, he always just says, looking for, to build a team of people who are incapable of making enemies. And that doesn't mean you can't piss people off, but, you have the skills to bring it back and, just get through the difficult stuff.
So let's break that down a little bit. What does that actually mean? What is a good person? What are some what have you already encountered that kind of, here's what you should watch out, or here's, we have, here's what qualifies you as such.
And don't use my name.
No, well... But actually, Mark and I met a long time, because I was at BBC Worldwide Productions when we just started Dancing with the Stars, and there were like 6 people, and it was like, shit, this is a big hit. And somehow, we did lots of other stuff like Top Gear, but we did a pilot of Absolutely Fabulous with Mitch Hurwitz, Eric and Kim Tannenbaum, Christine Zander was our writer. I brought Jennifer Saunders over from London, and that was another whole thing in terms of personalities in that mix, not to name any names. But again, just in terms of people that, whether they are pleasant to work with or not, it can just sometimes make life a lot shorter than it needs to be. So it was just, I've always looked like, so when we met with Mark, you get a sense of people that, that are passionate, and like Mark said, you just get out there and do it, and that's, it's not that having, YouTube or whatever platform you use to put your video on, whether it's Vimeo or Blip or whatever. It's not that it is necessarily the answer to all your problems. It's just another thing you have to do to get seen. You can't win the lottery if you don't buy a ticket type thing.
We often talk about good storytelling, quality. I mean, this is for anyone. How do you quantify that? What is quality storytelling, especially when it comes to the web? What are the ingredients there? I mean, we can say it's writing and the acting, but really when you're kind of like distilling down what makes the web different from TV or film. I mean, what quantifies good storytelling on the web? Is there a formula?
From our point of view, I mean, I think our audience is very heavily male. And very heavily young. Half of them are under. We have 2 billion. Anyway, depending which metric you look at, between 150 and 200 million people a month. 90% are male, 50% are under 24. And the big factor from a storytelling point of view for us is that if you watch an hour of television, all those decisions you make, like I'll give it to the first act break, or the first ad or whatever it might be, and if it's no good, I'm going. Those, if you're watching a 6-minute video, those exact same decisions are concertina down into the same time span. So on YouTube, people make a decision between 15 and 20 seconds in whether they're going to hang around or not. So if you have a credit and a bumper and a this and a that, by the time you get to the actual story, everybody's buggered off. So I think for us, it's for people who can, get into it, have a hook quickly. But it's also got to be, you don't want to just have an explosion in the front. We always joke somebody's got to die in the first 30 seconds because that's what they do in a game, But it is certainly a part of the storytelling. Hook them in quickly, and then you have to keep them.
I think one thing with web shows that drives me a little crazy is that there's this weird, like when you're making an independent film, you think, I'm going to submit this to festivals and it has to be a certain amount, like certain level of quality. It has to compete with other high-level films. With web, I feel like people go, well, I'll just make something and I'll be great in it and, I'll write it. I'm not a writer, but I'll write it. Why not? I have a funny idea. And I'll get my friend to shoot it and my friends will act in it. They're not actors, but whatever. It's a web show. And it's this weird thing, like why, I think people should treat web as the independent film version of TV. Like, there should be, or film, it should be competitive. And I'm not saying that you couldn't have the, $100,000 camera, but as far as acting and writing, like, I'm not a DP, so I'm not going to just be like, I'm going to shoot this. Why not? I have an idea. Like, I'm going to find a guy who's good at it. And same thing with a lot of actors who tend to just like, I'll write it. I mean, if you're not a writer, then don't do that. That's such an important part of the thing. And that's a lot of web shows I see, a majority of web shows I see, like 95% of web shows that I see, it's just like, the writing is so bad. And it's just, it lowers, it hurts everyone because, then there's this really high barrier to entry because anytime I tell someone I'm making, I don't even call them web shows anymore. I say digital series because when people say web show, they go, oh, it's a web show. Like, it's just, it has this kind of like, eh. So, and I would love to raise that bar. And it's actually how I met Mark. I had always preached that, and I had written a blog about, so I was like, I want to be the one that does it, obviously. And then Bannen Way came out, and I was like, I hate Bannen Way in a complimentary way because they did this great thing, and it's exactly what I was saying. They raised the level of everything, and that's how our love affair started.
It did.
It's how we started dating.
Because I saw it through my Google alert, and
Mark reads every single thing.
I was like, wait, what is he talking shit about the Bannen Way? Who is this guy? And then I responded back saying
some pretty mean things.
Thank you? Question mark. But it's funny because you were saying that, and I was thinking it feels like I could do the opposite of what you're asking, saying what doesn't work, and I was like, well, I'll try to think of something positive. But you said exactly what I was going to say, Yuri. Is like I feel like the key to it is finding talented people to do every position that you're doing. So if you're not a writer, find a great writer, and there are great writers that are writing things. And a friend of mine, Mark Zachary, who just did a Kickstarter campaign and raised $225,000. He's always talking about all these TV writers that have scripts, that they've all done pilots that haven't been made. They all have feature scripts that haven't been made. So reach out to the people that you know that are writers that are producing stuff and ask them what projects that they have that they would love to see get made. And teaming up with people that get things done. I mean, That's one of my big complaints that I'm always talking to people is that, I meet with people to, give them advice, and I'm having coffee with them, and like the hour and a half that goes by, I can tell that they're not really ready to do what she's talking about, which is figure it out for 14 hours, sitting in front of the computer and go, how do I set up a website on WordPress? Like, that's what you have to do as a filmmaker. You have to do everything from pre-production to production to post-production to finishing it to getting people there, eyeballs there, figuring out social media, figuring out Twitter. None of this like, I hate Twitter, I hate I don't even like Facebook, I don't give a shit. Like, figure out a way to get people to see your show or whatever you're doing, even if it's a trailer or whatever. And so I think that people need to, surround themselves with people that know how to do those things so you're not alone doing it, so that you have a team of people trying to figure it out. One person's there for 14 hours, the other person takes over and says, all right, I got this. You go figure out how we're gonna get a DP. You figure out, how we're gonna cast this with somebody that has done this before and has a kind of recognizable name that, it's not just, something that can give us a leg up over the 95% of the web series that Yuri's talking about.
I kind of have to counter some of this, though.
No,
countering.
disagree with you.
No.
When I got into the web space, it wasn't because I wanted to make a super successful web series, and it wasn't because I wanted to get 1 million views on something. It was because I was an actor that needed to get something seen by somebody. I wanted to have a comedic role out there that I could get into the hands of somebody who could hire me. So I didn't have a big team, and I was new to the whole thing, and I wrote it myself, and I basically put it up there. It ended up being 2 episodes, but we made the most of those 2 episodes, and I created an entire event around the launch of the 2nd episode. And it might seem like ridiculous because it's a lot of what you're saying, how there's this really high bar of entry now. But from the other side, it wasn't necessarily my goal. And in doing that, because I had that awesome piece of footage of myself, I was able to get it into the hands of John Hurwitz, who eventually, led to me being hired for American Reunion, which is the latest American Pie that was in theaters. So for me, it was really a means to an end. And I think that if you're going to go into making any sort of web content, you need to sort of know in your brain, what's the end goal? What is it that I want to do? Is it to have a ridiculously successful web series that has 1 million hits that's really high quality? Or is it that I need to be seen for this thing? And I'm talking like as an actor specifically. So just know what your goal is and don't be discouraged by the fact that there is so much high quality content, because maybe your idea is really good and maybe your acting is really great, and that's going to show through even if you don't have all of the tools that you think in your head you need in order to do something really successful.
And don't be discouraged when Grumpy Cat gets a movie deal.
Yeah, exactly.
That's always going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, that's it's funny. We always say about YouTube is just cat videos, and lo and fucking behold, one of them gets a movie deal.
I just wanted to add, you're right. But you said at the end of it, you had an awesome piece of footage. So obviously you kicked ass making this thing. It wasn't just something that you just put together.
Sure, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
somebody that tells me they work.
I didn't just grab my iPhone and was like,
Yeah,
hey, what's
yeah.
up?
You spent 14 hours trying to figure out WordPress. I know you're gonna get the best product possible. And in my defense, when I said we wanted millions of views, it was more of like, I was an actor who couldn't get an audition. Bottom line, I could not get an audition to save my life, even with a great agent. And Jesse was trying to direct. So we thought, like, if we can just do something that people can see me playing this role that I could write for myself, that I'm doing in acting class, that I'm killing in acting class, but nobody's seeing it, then let's try to do that. And that was kind of my thing. And, it becoming, successful as it was, that was, it was beyond what we could imagine. And still is, still paying off dividends now, where, when it was first done, I thought, wow, the success is awesome. Okay, I'm gonna get a TV series right after this. I'm gonna get this. And like, that didn't happen. But, I had a friend that said, you have no idea who's watching this. You have no idea who's seeing this. And a friend of mine, and my producing partner, Bailey, that helped us, he always used to say, he's like, once it's out, nobody's ever gonna see it. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, no, nobody's ever gonna see it. After this run of the 10 weeks, they're only gonna ever see the trailer, if that. They're just gonna know the Bannen Way and Mark Gant, and they're gonna go, oh, the Bannen Way, oh, right. oh yeah, I've heard of that. And that's really been the thing, is that I've had actually people that have actually either heard of it or saw the trailer but haven't ever seen it and have hired me. And then there's other people that are showrunners on huge TV series that have actually watched the show, watched the movie on Netflix, and have called me in. So it's like, I have no idea, and that was years later after the thing. But that was part of my thing, is getting people to see something.
Yeah, it's kind of it's, you know, as an actor or as a writer, like, I'm a writer first. I mean, I cast myself in everything, and I want to act, but writing is, you know, what I think I'm best at. If I happen to cast myself, fine.
You're a good writer.
Well,
Very good writer.
Thank you. Notice he didn't say anything about my acting. So.
You're an amazing actor.
I'm going to torture
Thank you.
I'm going to torture you.
So, you know, I once was on a set for Trauma, this TV show that was terrible. But a friend of mine's friend was directing it, and I was talking to the director for a second, and I was like, what does it take to become a TV writer? And he was like, well, you know, you could be like a writer's assistant for a few years and get coffee, and then you could maybe get staffed, and then, if, you know, in like 15 years, you can maybe pitch a show. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. That sounds terrible. I don't want to be an assistant, you know. And so what happened is, you know, I mean, thankfully to what we've made and like the people we've met and you know, fate and whatever, when I get meetings now, because on the basis of our projects, they don't bring me in to staff or to be an assistant. They bring me into, like, we're interested in your show, and that's big. And but it's taken me 7 years, but it's 7 years of making my own stuff, and it's, you know, I just, there's two routes to take, and I think you could do both simultaneously. But what the web offers is a chance to show what you're really good at, and not take the bullshit way of like, well, you just have to suffer for 8 years, 10 years, and maybe something will happen. You know, like, this kind of puts the power in your hands, and you could bring the quality and work really hard, and then maybe you put yourself at this level that you're always brought in as like, you know, the lead to a project, not as like an extra. So.
How do you break through the clutter now? You know, 2005 versus 2013. You know, there's a lot out there. There's a lot of content. So how do you break through that? How do you slice through that?
I mean, that's the biggest problem. You know, like, I think for both Mark and I, we were lucky to come in at a time where, I mean, you guys had a big deal, was one of the first deals of that size, and we were one of the first web shows, so it was like, it just hit, it was just luck and timing, and now it is very difficult, and, you know, we're lucky that the projects we get now are funded so we could spend money on marketing. But that is hard. And honestly, the best way is still quality. I mean, that's what we're talking about. It's, you know, the fact is, like I said, a lot of web shows are really terrible. And the ones that are really good, people start looking at and passing along because it's like, hey, there's really good talent attached to this. And I guarantee that'll help you rise to the top.
I think that, you know, on YouTube in particular, you know, we have the CMS, which is the system you can go into and you can see exactly what everybody's doing and what they're clicking on and when they're dropping off your video, which is a rabbit hole you can just disappear into. But I mean, by and large, the rule is, I know I said this to Mark earlier on, the more views you get, the more views you get. And it's just, you know, it's just that point at which something starts to take off, because although, you know, there are ways that, well, allegedly kind of, there are ways that YouTube markets, but really the biggest marketing thing is the audience itself. And so there is no kind of cast iron rule or playbook that says this is exactly what you can do to make a hit, but it is, you have to do absolutely all of these things, because, you know, who knows which one of them is going to make the difference. But it's fundamentally down to the audience and them sharing and the rest of it for, you know, be it the strange thing, or not necessarily a strange thing, but the thing that always surprises me, which is probably more of a comment on YouTube as a platform than anything else, is that the biggest, well, this is a big quick straw poll. If you share a video on YouTube, how many of you copy and paste the URL into an email? And how many of you actually click the Facebook button? Because for our audience, they very, very rarely click the Facebook or Twitter button. It's literally copying and pasting the URL is still the #1 way to share a video. And that's just not, you know, it just doesn't feed anything. It goes to one person, you know. So it's those things that you kind of learn a bit more. We did Battlestar Galactica, which obviously had a, you know, a bit of an older audience, and that was shared 4 times more on Facebook than other stuff that was getting 4 times as many views, because the older audience, 35 plus, is very used to that's how they share. But our guys will copy and paste the URL, you know. So you get to used to those little things. Like there's no black and white rules of this is exactly everything you can do equals a hit. But if you don't do all those things, you're not increasing your chances of getting it seen and getting it known, basically.
So for somebody starting today, is the advice to build up their kind of online presence and through social media and their audience and learn what the landscape is, or is it just to kind of go right into creating content, series or entertainment? Any kind of opinions around that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that there, as you said, Ian, there is no right or wrong. I mean, there's no like, you have to do it this way or you have to do it that way. I'm a big proponent of like knowing everything possible out there when I'm going to go do something. And so I'm always suggesting that everybody goes and looks at what are the successful shows that are out there, what's working, what are those elements that Ian's kind of talking about, what is it that they're doing. And, a lot of them you'll see is that's an original idea that's really interesting, that's something that people can relate to. And whether it's a niche audience or it's, a gender, like Lizzie Bennet Diaries. I was just on a panel with Bernie Sue, and I mean, just amazing, how that just blew up, I mean, they had this great idea, and it was like this built-in audience that they could have just, if they had just done like a web series, it would have been maybe like this level of like success. But to then expand it out into like full-on social media and having everybody have a Twitter page, every character, and I think it was like 15 different social platforms. They have a presence, they have a page, they've got characters, they've got the vlogs. I mean, it's just incredible what they've done. And so, I would go to watch what those people are doing and see how they're creating shows and how they're engaging with the audience and not just posting and praying kind of thing.
I mean, I think the cool thing about the web is, I mean, it's still, I hate saying the Wild West, it's so, everyone says it, but it has this, you don't really know. There are ways that shows succeeded, but as Mark and I can attest to, and everyone I think can attest to, is that everyone keeps saying, well, when we did Break a Leg, everyone was like, these are really long episodes. Someone said to me, oh, I don't watch anything over 100 seconds online. It's like, oh, I guess we don't say minutes anymore. I guess we just say seconds. And Break a Leg was successful. Our first season of Leap Year was 8 to 9 minute episodes. Our second season I pushed for 18 to 22 minute episodes. The second season did way better. And people were like, don't do that. No one watches long form online. So it's like, there are really very few guidelines because no one knows what really is going to hit. I mean, there are things that hit, but like it doesn't, I mean, networks included. I mean, all the meetings I'm sure that we've all taken, you're like, you don't know what you're talking about, do you? Like, no one knows. Everyone's like, I don't know. Like, there was a network that was like, make a web show, but like, it has to be under 22 minutes. It can be 21 minutes, but it can't be 22 minutes because then it would compete with television. And I was like, what does that mean? Does the length of the show then dictate what genre it is, what style? Oh, okay, well, it's 21 minutes. It's obviously a web show. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Why? Like, just do 22 minutes online. Do 30 minutes. Do 33 minutes online. There's really no rules. And so, I mean, that's also the terrifying thing about online is that there is no guidelines. You could look, and you could look at everything and make your own path. But right now, I mean, whoever thinks of the next clever idea is everyone's going to be like, this is how you do it. Then a year later, everyone's going to be like, this is how you do it. So, I mean, it's very cool and creative and scary.
It's kind of strangely reassuring how similar it is to the traditional world in a weird way. Because it's the old William Goldman Adventures in the Screen Trade, nobody knows anything. And the quote that he has in that book from the studio exec that said, if in the last 20 years I'd said yes, I'd said everything I said no to, and no to everything I said yes to, I'd probably come out about the same. But which is not reassuring to anybody in any way, shape or form. But it's still, like, again, you just have to, you get out there, and I mean, we have the same thing. I try and having been on the other side and pitched to network execs and been through all that shit, you just try and be a bit more real with people. And, especially when I was, when I lived in London and we came here, it was always like the English thing. People, I like to think are generally straight. I'm sure it's not actually true, but are generally kind of straight with you in pitch meetings in the UK. or either, or maybe that I have rose-colored spectacles in hindsight, but there was still, you used to come here and people think they'd sold everything. You know, it was amazing. Everybody'd go home and they'd start planning on the next house they were buying, the rest of it. And we always said that, you know, there are 128 ways of saying no in this town, and they all include the word yes. You know, and it was just, and hopefully, you know, I would like to think, you know, that's one thing that we're doing a bit differently in the digital space, is hopefully things are a bit straighter and people are a bit honest. Because, you know, there is nothing like, we don't have resources to do development. So, you know, I know either these people get this show or they don't. It's not like there's a vested big industry where it's like, actually, it doesn't make any sense for us to change the system because we have 100 writers that just make pilots every year and get paid to do them. You know, we actually either we make stuff or we don't. And people know that when they come in. They're getting a hell of a lot less money than they might be if they'd sold it elsewhere, but they're getting to make it. The quid pro quo bit is that sometimes the people, you know, we have these guys that run their own channels on YouTube and they do quite well. And so when they come to us, they've never actually had money up front before. You know, it's always been they're living off waiting for their next check from their YouTube CPMs. So there's been a bit of a trade-off with that. Is you know, we're not all over people in terms of notes by any stretch of the imagination, but still we're, you know, 100% funding a show, so we still have an input, and that's been you know, that's most of them are, you know, are very understanding of that, but inevitably there are one or two that don't. So I think it's the same dynamics. It's just hopefully things happen quicker. You get a quicker no. Whereas we always say a quick no is the second best answer. So my cliches are flying tonight.
No, I was going to say, I've just started the pitching process with digital studios and platforms and things like that, and it's actually been very encouraging that exactly what you're saying, like, people are really straightforward with you. So that's, yeah, I mean, I haven't yet pitched to traditional television, but it seems like people are really straightforward, so it's encouraging.
You know, my friend said a really smart thing the other day. He said that, as he's an actor, and he said that everywhere he goes to workshops and things, he notices that actors are all focused on getting successful or getting their next job or getting famous. And I think everyone here is like that. And he says no one seems to really be focused on getting good, like getting really good at your craft, you know? And it really is the same thing with web shows. You know, like, for a second, stop thinking like, this is the show that's gonna launch my career, and think, I wanna make a really interesting project, and I wanna be really good in this, and I want it to be really good. And then just forget about everything else for a second while you're making it. And I think that'll really set it aside, because it really is true. When he said it, I was like, yeah, I mean, that's exactly what people do. It's, you know, I mean, if we call ourselves artists, then we have to compare ourselves to real artists. So, you know, I imagine Michelangelo probably practiced quite a bit and probably really worked on his art. And there's a thing with film where it's like, well, I'll just make it. I have some friends, I'll make it. And it's like, it shouldn't be. If you're an artist, then, you know, you have to be an artist. So I was going well until the last part. No, and I said, be an artist, just be an artist. That's okay. Right. Thank you.
Actually, a good segue to some of these questions. We have a question in from Jackie for everyone. How do you pitch an idea to Hulu? Once you have shot the trailer, how do you entice them to meet with you? How do you get your foot in the door?
That's a good question. I'm trying to get into pitch to Hulu too, so you have the answer.
I mean, it's one of those things that's, I mean, you know, you're always at the mercy of various corporate machinations. I think at the moment, very boringly, that they're just in a bit of flux because nobody knows what the corporate ownership structure is going to be there in 6 months' time. So I'm not sure. I don't know them personally, but with Jason Kilar leaving, I believe it's kind of in a bit of a holding pattern, but that might be why things are a bit slower. But.
Yeah, we've had trouble getting through to Hulu too, because they seem to they're not quite sure what their future is going to be like. So
the other option is become very good friends with Andy Forsell, who runs Hulu. So you know.
Even outside of Hulu, though, how do you get your foot in the door once you've?
You know, it helped. And that's something that Mark showed me, was to do a trailer. You know, for the show. I mean, it's what we did for 7-Eleven too. Do a trailer, do a very nice pitch deck, and shop that around. I mean, we did a show called Lovemakers, which we never actually did. It's just a trailer for it, and yeah,
it's so good.
Thanks. It's so good. For 4 years,
it's really sad.
We've been trying to pitch it. Everyone loves it. No one wants to give us money for it, but they love it. But it's gotten, you know, me other work, and gotten me meetings. Both of us meetings, lots of meetings. Again, no one wants it, but they love it. But that's one way, is to show, like, hey, I can put something really good together. I've thought of everything for you. You know, here's the show. Here's how you make it. And that should hopefully, if it's good, that should hopefully get you some meetings.
Yeah, and going and reaching out to the other filmmakers that have already done that and already had that, done shows at Hulu or someplace else, talking to them, getting that trailer or that, the project to them so they can take a look at it, and if they like it, they can maybe pass it on. We're all filmmakers trying to, get to the next,
It's a very small, supportive community, I think. So it's, if I see something great, I'd gladly pass it on, because why not?
And, there's another ridiculous metaphor I just came up with. No, but actually, in terms of the connections you make and how you build them towards the connection you're actually looking to get to, is like that show Barter Kings. Have you seen Barter Kings? Anybody seen? Where somebody gets a paperclip and they end up with a Ferrari. You can't, it tells you a ridiculous metaphor. You can't. I mean, in terms of if you're trying to get Hulu's the Ferrari, you can't go from your paperclip. You can't kind of just walk straight in the door. You've got to make all those little connections to that person. It might take a while, but you have one shot, credibility-wise, to get in the door. So whether that means kind of just not too cynically, but whether it's LinkedIn and Facebook and just seeing where those connections are, and it may take a bit of time, to find who that right person might be. But it's always about, this town is all about relationships and recommendations. It's very difficult. There'll be the odd one that you get that was, just becomes an outlier. That might be one person whose mum was Michael Eisner's assistant. But I think that's the way you have to look at it, is that really I've got one shot in terms of credibility of getting in there, and it may take time, but it's better to take the time and get in with credibility than just try and do it quickly and lose that one shot.
So that segues nicely into Chris Bailish's question. So once you find a script, that you like, a director, a DP, how do you actually structure a deal with them? What's the experience there?
Structure a deal with a network? Structure a deal
with everyone, with a team.
Oh, with a
crew. You're working with.
Oh, I see. God, I mean, it depends.
That assumes people are getting paid anything.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, yeah. I mean, if they're getting paid, then you hire them, and you...
Or what do you promise them?
It so depends, like if it's I started a production company with my brother and two other guys who are good friends of mine, and we each do different things. My brother and I write, he does the music, one of the other guys is an editor, the other guy is the director of photography, but we also kind of put everything together, and so we started the company and we split everything, in four. And then we hope the people that we bring in, we hope that we eventually pay them. That's kind of the hope, is that they love your project, and then it depends which level you're hiring them at. If it's a producer guy who can help you sell or producer lady can help you sell your show, then you offer them a percent. I mean, I think it varies on who you're hiring.
Yeah, I think percent is really popular way to do it, especially if you can't afford to pay anyone up front. Percent is a really good idea.
I give you just food, I think, right? When we
yeah.
A percentage
I generally
of the food.
pay you.
I signed a percent, but you said and you
percent
gave me
of the food that we had on set.
You gave me cheese and crackers.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say two things to that. One is just what Yuri was saying in terms of, you're building a team, and then to go what Ian said earlier is you just want to make sure that team is the team that you plan on living with for 6 years. And so, sometimes if you're just meeting people, I think a lot of people end up kind of getting in bed with somebody going, this director's going to do it. I'm going to okay, so he's going to be the guy, and I'm giving him half of my ownership of this property, and we're going to move forward and do a thing. And then 9 months later, nothing's happening, and this guy's shooting in Bucharest because he's doing this other movie, and you don't know where he is. And so, you're trying to, control the ownership a little bit if you're creating it or if you're producing it. Retain a lot of that kind of the points or the percentage of it, and kind of do let's just get through this. And again, it's part of you're saying, instead of thinking long term of we're gonna sell this and make millions of dollars. That was the biggest joke. Just saying, I couldn't even say it seriously. Millions of dollars on this web series or feature or whatever. God, you can never make millions of dollars in this town unless you're Eisner's sister. But I guess my point is to focus on just creating this one project and this whatever that is, if it's a trailer or if it's a season, and you guys are just everybody's there for that, and then let's see how this goes from here, and we'll in good faith negotiate your we'll try to get you on as a producer or director or whatever. Just, I've had nightmare stories from friends of mine who've just done a short, and then everybody is attached as the project, and they had an awful experience, and then it never goes anywhere because nobody wants to work with each other, and everybody's got ownership of it, and they don't know where to go with it. So
yeah, I mean, the fact is, if you're starting a project, it's your baby, and so you should retain as much ownership of it as possible. The way you get everyone else is hopefully they love the project. I mean, I'll send the script to everyone we hire. Like, I'll send it to a grip who's potentially interested, because when he's on set, I want him to be excited about it, because I mean, we're not paying him very well. We're paying him sometimes, but we're not paying him great. I want, everyone needs to be happy and involved in the project. Everyone needs to love it. I love when a grip laughs at a scene, like they're focused, they're into it. It's a different style than just filmmaking where it's just like you're in, you're out, like on big sets, because you're getting paid well and you're like, this is my job. On the web, it's like, you get people who are lovers of what you're making, and then the people that really, I think at the end of a project is actually a great time to sort of, okay, well, we worked really well together. Maybe we could split the percent of this, or I mean, because it's so hard. If you give someone a percent and then they're terrible, it's just it's.
That will be the first time that happened in this town ever.
Zero,
Yeah.
but okay.
With Leap Year, you funded it yourself, right?
No. Leap Year was funded. So Lovemakers, the show that we were pitching, was what got us. Originally, they hired us just to write it, my brother and I. And then I was like, well, we can just shoot it. And I showed them Lovemakers as an example, and they were like, okay, then shoot it. So that's how that happened. So it was fully funded both seasons, and we were able to hire people, and yeah, so that was nice.
So this one is Ian. How do you deal with game companies' copyright issues? Is your, in terms of content characters and
we have to deal with it, is the answer to that. So, I mean, actually, when you're, in terms of the gameplay stuff on Machinima, that's a whole different ballgame. The game companies will turn a blind eye to that because they know it's publicity, and by definition, the fact that somebody's playing the game, they've already bought it, so they're not losing money by letting that person do that. But with Halo and Mortal Kombat and Street Fighter, those are all deals involving Microsoft, Warner Brothers, Capcom. E3 this week is a whole, whole set of meetings with, with EA and Activision and everybody, because we can't do anything, particularly on the, for want of a better word, the legitimate, the premium content, because that's all got to be, all got to be above board, because they can just take it down. There's no point of spending $1 million and using characters from Mario or whatever it might be. We did actually had a pitch for a show which I wanted to do called Game. It was Gamer, but it was Game ER, and it was the ER where all the injured game characters went. So you would have Mario next to Master Chief from Halo, and it was just too much of a, we actually were going to do a development process, because you can do it into, parody, you can get away with it, but it has to be, you have to be able to recognize who the character is without using the exact costume. So Mario without the M on his hat and all that kind of stuff. But because we have so many close relationships with the game studios, it just wasn't worth us going there in the end. But suffice to say, we have to be above board with all that.
What about like fan films and stuff like that? I mean,
funny you should say that. So we're just actually at the moment we're doing a dozen fan films. We're working with people that are, that have come to us and said, look, some of them have done Kickstarters, but even with those, we've gone to the game studios and the publishers and the developers and said, look, we're helping these guys complete their passion projects. Some of them are just kind of turn a blind eye and say, I don't even want to know, just get on with it. But others are really engaged, and they'll never make them official. And we'll never get anything in writing. I don't think they'll be like, yes, you're fine doing it. But by the fact that they're engaged and we're in touch with them, hopefully means, as long as they're all talking to each other, that we're not going to get a notice to take the videos down when they go. But it also shows, the game studio as well, the quality of stuff we can do. I mean, these guys that have just done one for Fallout, and they've just sent us the first cut of it. It's just incredible what they've done. I mean, like you guys did, on kind of a shoestring budget, just calling in favors, and it just looks as good as anything else I've seen. And again, like with the Good Cops guys, even though we might not do another season of that, they're now my go-to guys if I need something done, and they've paid that forward. And the same with these guys now. They've really invested in that, and in terms of the way it's done and how good it looks, it gives me enough comfort almost to go to a game studio with them next time round. I think that's another thing about, you're paying it forward all the time, investing your own time in those things.
So the next question comes from Stephanie. Monetization, YouTube ads, helpful or hurtful? Do they take viewers away? Are they worth it? Do people make money? No?
I mean, we've survived outside of YouTube a bit. Our shows are we go to brands or digital studios, hopefully. So, I mean, ads are a part of everything. I don't think they're a huge issue. For Leap Year, we actually, instead of using the YouTube commercials and ads, which we didn't need the revenue from that, we cut the commercial for the brand that sponsored us, like right in the center of the video. No one seemed to complain. You could just skip it. So, that was fine. But
if you, it depends what your goal is. If you want people to see your stuff, then don't monetize, because there is a drop off from the ads. There is a bounce rate. It's like if the video comes up. I like to think for premium or even longer form stuff, if people see that they've got an 8-minute, an 8-minute video coming, they're probably okay. We would hope sitting through a 30-second ad, but you can't expect them to sit through a 30-second ad for a 1-minute piece of content. So, it's just the flip side of the catch-22 is if that thing then gets 10 million views and you're not monetizing. But you only do the maths on that. run of network CPM on YouTube might be $2. So if that means you get $2,000 for every million views. And in terms of, how many videos actually get 1 million views, you just have to do that trade-off as to, how you want to do it. I think, but there is a whole conversation going on around YouTube at the moment. It's still really now they're about the audience. It's still, if you were to spend 20 minutes on YouTube, it's better for YouTube if you watch 10 2-minute cat videos than one 20-minute episode of Halo. And that's something they're looking at, whether they address that or whether they embrace that. But also YouTube is, it's the main platform, but it's not the only platform. There are other places. Again, you have to do everything. You have to be on Vimeo. You have to do all those other things. Vimeo's a lot smaller, but it might be a bit more user-friendly. So I think, it's worth looking at YouTube as part of your strategy, but it's not the only strategy.
Talk a little bit about branded entertainment, especially Mark and Yuri. What was the procedure there? Did you approach them? They approached you? What was that?
So, as with everything in the business, we it was always through a connection somehow, someone suggesting us for something. Again, we started when we worked with a company called Blip, and they brands would advertise on their site, and at one point they asked for content, and so they knew us as content creators, and we shot a few videos, and that helped roll into other jobs. People go, oh, I saw the 7-Eleven road trip. Can you do this? Can you do that? And then you eventually build clients. It is like pulling teeth still. We go to meet with ad agencies, and their thing is always, well, why don't I just put a 30-second spot on television? Like, why would I do a web show? It's a stupid thing, because so with Leap Year, the company experienced a 35% jump in insurance buys and quotes, which is huge. It's huge, and it was. It cost way less. Maybe not way less, but it cost maybe as much as a 30-second spot on television. That's insane. They could have 3 shows at the cost of 3 spots, and it engages people. And it's like, I think we're at a point with advertising where we have to get the people to be fans of the product instead of just be like, oh, it's a commercial, okay, I'll buy Coke. I think there's got to be an engagement thing. So that's how we try to sell it. But oh man, it's so hard right now. Like, it's getting better, and that's where the money is currently, or the digital studios. But it's about pitching them a good idea that they could also brand. So, with Bannen, you guys had a brand attached, right? You didn't. They didn't. But with Lovemakers, we pitched several brands, and we got meetings from it. Everyone said no. Everyone loved it, but they all said they love it. They said no. But yeah, it's the same as pitching to a network, except you go, here's how Trojan condoms would work really well on the show, or here's how Coke would work really well on the show, and try to sell them that, and they'll tell you they'll just advertise on TV, and then you go home cry.
Well, the big part of the big issue block wall for brands is that there's an ad agency and there's a PR firm and there's all these people that already have digital divisions that are supposedly making digital things for their brand, And their brands all have a brand brief that tells them what the brand wants to put out in the world. And us filmmakers don't have access to that because there's 100 guys that are in ad agencies that are getting those brand briefs and are putting up. They have in-house writers. They've got all this stuff, and I'm sure you deal with sales and brands and stuff too. It's like it's just not. It's not an easy go-to thing unless you have an in with a brand somehow. And even then, I would say, you know, instead of going to Pepsi, to go to Shasta. Like, go down to somebody that's looking for.
It's also, I think what's best is, Wilson says this, is to go to the PR agency instead of the ad agency, because the PR agency, you know, represents kind of the image of the company, and which is what a web series or whatever sort of caters to, is like, well, here's how we can make this look good and for audiences to like it. Whereas an ad agency is more like, well, we need to sell a bunch of Coke. So the PR companies are maybe better to go to, but yeah.
I think the one thing that people always forget about the brands as well as having the brand brief, they have a particular thing they're trying to achieve in a particular time frame. So they have a particular campaign that's coming up and it's going from September to, so they have a brand flight that you also have to fit with. So one of the challenges with premium content is, you know, it takes us for a, you know, we're effectively making independent small movies, like $2 million, $3 million movies. And those things take 6 to 9 months to make from start to finish, but brands are only buying 4 to 5 months out. So, you know, and then their flight's only 2 months. So we always, you know, our production cycle is longer than the brand buying cycle. So there's all those things that kind of come into play as well. But usually, and again, it's not necessarily enormously reassuring, it comes down to there being one person at the brand that just happens to fall in love, happens to fall in love with the show in some way. And, you know, you get that evangelist in there, whether it's the PR agency or the agency. But I heard a story about a show that was pretty big on one of the portals last year, remained nameless, but had a very big brand in it that's put $7 million in it because the woman who was buying it at the branded entertainment agency just really loved the agent, the guy that was selling it. She just really
$7 million?
Something like that. And that was the kind of main, whether that's kind of folklore or not, but it's not beyond the realms of belief. You know, she just really liked this guy.
So it went back to being handsome.
But that was how you got Bannen Way done, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
That's weird. That's never worked for me.
So how do you build a sustainable career? Is it possible, and what's the runway there? How long does it take?
I was going to say, if I knew that, then.
I mean, you know, we've luckily been surviving, and I mean, I stress surviving, for the last few years off of doing what we do. Oh, God, I mean, I hate to sound like a broken record. You make good stuff and then hope, you know, that through that you make connections and you meet people who like what you do and then hire you. You know, we did Love Makers, which never went anywhere, but then we got this thing and then that thing, and those things brought us to that. And I mean, but there are months that I'm like, well, maybe I won't ever work again. You know, it's especially, I mean, like just recently we had a very long cold streak. I was like, I don't know what to do. So it's like acting. It's like anything. It's like any freelance, is that you keep making great stuff until eventually something is big enough and you're lucky enough and you're, I guess, good looking enough to get $7 million. And it hits, but I mean, it's, if there was an answer to that.
I think what's really cool right now, though, is that everything is morphing and changing so much. Like, as an actor, you know, even like 6 years ago, if you did something other than just acting, there was this sort of like weird stigma that like you do like something else too. You must not be a successful actor. And now it's like if you don't do something else other than acting, people are like, oh, yeah. Like you don't do what? Oh, you're not a multi-hyphenate. You're not doing other things. And when there's people like Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Zooey Deschanel who are doing things on so many different platforms, it's a really cool time to like have that freedom to do a whole bunch of different stuff that can help propel you in all of those avenues at the same time. So there's so much more opportunity than there was, and in public consciousness too. Like everyone's so used to it. So it's really exciting, I think.
It's a really good point, actually. A friend of mine, she survives and she does like a million things. She shoots things for people and she's a producer and she's an actress. And so, I mean, you know, the more you could find jobs and the better it is. So.
And those are like the people you want to work with now too, because you know that they're really passionate and they are like really interested in everything that they're doing. So it's cool.
Yeah, I was going to just say that my manager, you know, when I signed with them, there was, you know, they only want actors that produce and create other projects. You know what I mean? Because they're looking for people that are doing other things. So they have like, you know, they have IP that they can be pitching and selling and, making more money off of you. But it is, it's funny, I was talking to an actor who was saying, everything's changed, now that like movie stars are the head of are leads and pilots, and the leads and pilots are now like, recurring, and then recurring, and the thing, and it becomes a thing, and I used to be, recurring, now I can't even get a co-star, it's like, there's that reality. And then there's this reality over here of just like people taking their career in their own hands and making stuff. And, it's like, what Ian was saying, it's like this, it's a longer haul, but the payoff, man.
But I can't even say it's longer, right? I mean, like, again, how many people have acted for years and are like, oh, I got 2 lines on something. It's like, I mean, here you position yourself in a place where, you get cast or you get hired as a writer at a higher level than...
Yeah, the first 7 years of my career waiting for my agent to call. This last 7 years, much better.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Well,
much better.
Not that I'm name dropping, but the BBC, we used to get some really interesting meetings, and I met with Sharon Stone once, who looked nothing like Sharon Stone, but she looked amazing. Just so much changed. But I always remember her saying that Basic Instinct was her 18th film when she was 32, and she'd just done shitty film after shitty film, and it was she'd been eating just a boiled egg a day for the last 12 years or whatever it was. That's actually what she said. And and she just slugged away. I have no idea. I've never been on the acting side of things, but that kind of everybody assumed that she was she'd always been like that, but it was just that one thing that that broke out. And look where she is now.
Do we have time for one? Do we have time for one more question? So the last question comes from Stephanie. It's a good wrap up. What is the new frontier? What is the new frontier in new media? What do you think is the next big thing? Final frontier.
The Galaxy S4. No, sorry, that's the ad campaign. I think there's just the whole conversation about just viewing consumption, viewing habits changing. Netflix is changing the landscape. Hulu is another thing entirely. YouTube's contributing to that in some way. I think we were talking about this a bit earlier on. There's going to be in the kind of non-premium space, should we call it, in the YouTube space at the moment. I think there's going to be rivals there that come up. But I think fundamentally, the thing I keep saying to people is you have to disconnect the word television from the device television. It's now really. As you all know, I mean, in terms of the number of people with different, devices and everything, there's going to be content. Content is everywhere on loads of different platforms. Good ideas are coming from all sorts of. I mean, you look at Angry Birds. Angry Birds is now, just such an enormous franchise and hasn't really done anything on television. They've got movies in development and the rest of it, but they've been able to develop to get to where they are without really having to worry about Hollywood. I mean, they came the first and then got pissed off and went back to Finland and just stuck with what they were doing. And I think, I was saying this the other day, if you look on your phone now, any one of those apps on there, be it LinkedIn or Angry Birds or whatever it might be, there's going to be LinkedIn the movie at some point, I'm sure. But there will be there'll be a story in that. So I think I think the big things, ideas are going to come from all sorts of different places. And again, not rocket science, but that box in the corner is just one of many places that you're going to be able to get your entertainment from.
And I think as a result of that, I mean, the whole genre is being taken way more seriously. Like we would get meetings with networks before, and they would be like, I don't know what to do with you guys. Like, this is great, but we're not going to do anything, but it's great what you're doing. And now they're all trying, and they're all actually reaching out to us because, like, hey, you guys have done this before, and we don't know what we're doing, and we need help. And there's actual money slowly coming in, but there's money, like actual money, not like $2,000 an episode. Like, there's real money. And it's still not quite, I mean, it's still this weird perception of like, well, you're on the web, you can make a TV show for way less, right? It's magic, you could just do that. That's changing, but slowly. But definitely, I mean, every year the budgets are going higher, and I mean, we're starting to talk to actual networks developing content and shooting it too, like having our whole production company produce for a network online. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, that's what my dream was, is not to be a staff writer on a show that someone else is doing, but was to do my thing with my people and my actors. I mean, so we're developing a show right now, hopefully, that will have a lot of the same people I've used since our first feature. And my brother and I are writing, and I'm directing, and it's like, this is, I mean, I wouldn't have thought it would happen a year ago. So it's definitely becoming a real thing, and that's why I keep pushing for quality, because it's like the better shows get online, the more money is going to flow, and the more it's seen as a real thing. And I mean, things like the what's it called, Kevin Spacey show on Netflix, really, House of Cards. Thank you. Yeah, it's amazing. It's exactly, and it makes you think, okay, well, exactly. There's no TV anymore. It's just whatever, and Kevin Spacey's in a show, and it's fantastic. It's better than most TV shows, and it looks better than most TV shows.
It's amazing what $50 million will do.
More than 50, yeah.
It costs more than most TV shows
under the
as well.
new media
Kevin Spacey's
contract.
very attractive. Was it really under the new media?
Yes.
No,
It
really?
was it was 100 million for 2 seasons for allegedly for 26.
The new media contract is kind of terrible too. Just like it's just anyway.
Well, I think we're out of time with that.
On that note.
But if you do want to continue the conversation, you can do it at SAG Foundation on Twitter, or the hashtag is SAGF as in Frank. And if you want to continue the conversation with anyone individually on the panel, maybe we just go down the line really quickly. How can they do that?
You can email me at Yuri, Y-U-R-I, at hlgstudios.com, HLG. And yeah, I think that's it.
You can find me on Twitter at Mark Gant.
I also have a Twitter
2 T's.
account, damn it.
Yeah, you never use it.
Damn.
And or my site, markgant.com.
You can find me on Twitter at @HellsLevy. It's HELSLEVY. And if you're an actor, like brand new to new media, and you have no idea what any of this was all about, I have a resource page on my personal website that is basically like all the things that I learned coming up, and I'm still figuring out and learning from these awesome people. So check that out, because there's a lot of good resources on there for you.
It's incredible.
He's on it. Oh, Helenna Santos Levy is my website. It's my full name, no hyphen. And you'll go to a thing that says Helenna's Resources, and that's the tab. And you'll see awesome pieces from all these guys, actually. So you can learn there. And it's on Ms. Biz too, yeah.
I'm on Twitter at Moffetteer, which is MOFFITTEER, I think. And one last thing I would say, just in terms of narrative, just have a look at, go onto YouTube and have a look at some of the games that have been launched at E3 this week, or have been talked about a lot, particularly Assassin's Creed 4 and DayZ. Those are games that are utterly seamless. There's no moving around. You don't have to wait for levels to load. And when I was sat there, I watched a 20-minute demo of Assassin's Creed 4 today, and it's the entire Caribbean that they've mapped out, and you just wander around the whole thing, get on your ship, move around. DayZ is the same. DayZ is a 260 square kilometer map where you are going around avoiding zombies, basically. And people just play these things for days because they're making their own stories, because every single game is different. And I just sat there, I was thinking, that's where very soon, movies and games are going to intersect into something where you actually are just telling your own story. And a lot of people actually watch DayZ because it's a multiplayer online. You can actually watch, you don't have to take part. And so people are watching those narratives unfold, and people are building their own characters. And I think there's something there as to where those two things are going to intersect. And if I could just work it out, it'd be sorted. But I think it's worth having a look.
And to add on to that, my Twitter name is...
Super handsome guy.
It's super handsome guy. It's Yuri, Y-U-R-I, Baranovsky, B-A-R-A-N-O-V-S-K-Y. Sorry for being Russian.
I'm at Zadi, Z-A-D-I, and thank you to the SAG Foundation for the first panel, and thank you for everyone for attending.